She woke to darkness so complete she couldn't see her own hands. The air felt wet, stale, and close to her face, as if the room itself were pressing in on her. Somewhere above, a lock snapped, metal scraping against metal, followed by the heavy thud of bolts being drawn back. Elisabeth froze. She knew what that sound meant. Her father was coming down. It had been months since she had last seen sunlight. Months since the door to the outside world had closed for the final time. She had been lured into the basement under the pretense of helping her father carry a door. When she bent to hold it steady, he pressed a cloth against her face. By the time she woke, she was inside the narrow concrete chamber he had spent years secretly constructing beneath their home. The space was barely wider than a bed, with low ceilings and no windows, built behind a smaller workshop room, and accessible only through a network of hidden doors. That first moment after she regained consciousness, she realized the truth. He had planned this long before she understood what he was capable of. The early days were disorienting. She had no clock and no sense of time in the sealed chamber. Her father came and went whenever he pleased, bringing food, demanding obedience, and warning her that any attempt to escape would destroy the entire family. The only light came from a single bulb he controlled from outside. The concrete walls absorbed every sound except his voice, which echoed sharply inside the narrow space. Elisabeth tried to measure time by the meals he brought, but they arrived at inconsistent intervals. Days and nights blurred until she could no longer tell the difference. As the weeks passed, she learned how to survive the crushing repetition. She counted her breaths. She traced cracks in the wall with her fingertips. She listened for vibrations overhead to guess whether people were walking through the house above. On some days, she heard faint voices, her mother's, her siblings, unaware she was directly beneath them. Knowing she was so close and yet unreachable was almost harder than loneliness itself. Her father controlled every aspect of her world. He dictated when she could eat, sleep, wash, and speak. He monitored her reactions closely, punishing any sign of defiance. In that cramped room, she learned to bury her emotions deeply, keeping them hidden where he couldn't see them. It was the only form of resistance she still had. As winter turned to spring, the space became damp. Condensation dripped down the walls and soaked into the thin mattress. She developed rashes and persistent coughs. The air felt heavy, and breathing became difficult when her father shut off the ventilation fan. She didn't know whether he did it intentionally or merely forgot, but either possibility terrified her. She pressed her ear to the metal door often, listening for him, unsure whether his absence meant safety or danger. She created a mental routine to stay sane. Each day she imagined walking through familiar streets, recalling every storefront and intersection. She replayed memories of school friends, the sound of their laughter, the warmth of sunlight on her skin. She repeated the alphabet backward, recited every song she could remember, and constructed imaginary conversations to keep her mind from collapsing into silence. When intrusive thoughts came, panic, fear, hopelessness, she forced herself to focus on details, the pattern of scratches near the floor, the uneven texture of the concrete ceiling, the squeak of the metal door when he opened it. About 6 months into her captivity, she became ill. The cold air and damp bedding led to fever and weakness. She begged her father for medical supplies, and he responded with irritation, insisting she would recover on her own. She lay curled under the thin blanket, sweating and shivering until several days passed and the fever finally broke. She realized then that she would survive only if she learned to rely on herself, even in the most desperate moments. During the rare times he allowed her into the adjoining storage chamber to stretch her legs, she memorized every bolt and seam in the wall. She investigated the hinges and traced the shape of the hidden doorway he used to enter. She examined the ventilation system, hoping for a weakness, but found none. The door leading upward was sealed with layers of steel, concrete, and electronic locks. She understood that escape was impossible without outside intervention, something she knew would not come for a long time. Her father brought supplies with increased frequency as the months passed, sometimes entering multiple times a day to assert his control. He claimed her disappearance had been reported to police and that authorities believed she had run away voluntarily. He described how her mother cried each night, begging her to return. These stories stabbed at Elisabeth's resolve, but she learned to parse truth from manipulation. She suspected most of what he said was designed to break her spirit. 10 months into her imprisonment, she reached a turning point. She realized she would survive not because he allowed her to, but because she chose to. She began to track his routines more closely. She counted the time between his visits, memorizing the rhythm of his footsteps on the stairs. She kept mental notes of when he seemed stressed, distracted, or careless. She no longer reacted emotionally when he tried to intimidate her. Her silence became deliberate, controlled. It rattled him in ways she could see but dared not acknowledge. By now, the underground space had become her entire universe. She moved through it with practiced familiarity, maneuvering in the narrow hallway without bumping into walls, knowing exactly how to brace herself when the door opened abruptly. She anticipated the creak of the hinges before they sounded. She learned the exact interval between the click of a lock and the moment his face appeared around the corner. Still, she held on to hope. She believed that the world above her had not forgotten her completely. She trusted that eventually something would go wrong in his carefully constructed system, some oversight, some mistake that would give her a chance to live again. Even in darkness, hope was the one thing he couldn't take from her. Those first 10 months were only the beginning of her ordeal, but they showed the depth of her resilience. She survived isolation, deprivation, illness, and constant psychological pressure. She endured a prison built for one purpose: to break her. Yet she remained unbroken. It was a strength that would carry her through the years ahead, long beyond what any person should ever have been forced to face. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.